What's up, Dawgland? It's good to see y'all. It's been quite some time since me and Jack been able to sit down and talk about things, but it's good to be here to talk about a lot that has happened over the last couple of weeks. I went on vacation at a very inopportune time with the Myles Garrett trade, so it is very excited to get in here with Jack and talk about a lot that has happened. But first, Jack, how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. Yeah, like you went on vacation at the worst time possible, but no hard feelings, man. We our lives have gotten crazy over the last couple years, so it's all good. But yeah, we do have a lot to catch up on in terms of Browns talk. But excited for everybody that's hopping in and talk and joining us. But yeah, we got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we have a lot, we're just going to dive into all of this. This is probably going to be quite a handful in this show for us to cover here. But, like I said, there's a lot to talk about. And the biggest thing that happened the day before I went on vacation and I couldn't hop in here, I'm glad that Jack and Jake were able to sit down and do a live to discuss it. But that was the Myles Garrett trade. And, it was something that was talked about all offseason, was even more so when they reworked his contract to make it a little bit easier to trade him. We thought that he would continue to be here and maybe more down the road, but first day of June, they made the move to decide to trade him to the Los Angeles Rams. In return, they got a 2027 first round pick, a 2028 second round pick, and a 2029 third round pick, which is a conditional pick. Um, it is conditional because if the Rams trade Myles Garrett to anybody in the AFC North in that time frame, the Browns will get another first round pick from the Rams. And also included in the deal was Jared Verse, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year a couple years ago. So the Browns have the last two Defensive Rookie on the year of the years on their defense currently. So, you know, take me back to what your initial thoughts were with this trade because I unfortunately didn't get to really gauge your reaction on the show. So take me back to what you're thinking here.
So I'm actually going to go back and I got a confession to make to you, Anthony. That Sunday night started getting some buzz that something was going to happen. And it was like in the process of trying to go to bed, and you start hearing rumblings from people. And it was just like, okay, it's the same rumblings we've heard time and time again. There's no way this is going to happen. I said, it's just probably another blip in the Myles Garrett saga. He'll be here next week. For minicamp, will be good. Monday morning comes, Ken Carman show. Ken and Nick Padone, who was filling in for Lima, are talking about it. Then Tony Rizzo's talking about it on his show. Started getting more messages, started contacting people, and there was legit smoke to it. And even though some of the beat reporters were kind of like, no, this isn't going to happen this time, part of me thought it was going to happen that week. I didn't think it was going to happen that Monday. And I came in from doing yard work, and the Schefter tweet dropped, and it was just like, oh my God, it really happened on June 1st. Like, they didn't wait for it. The Browns got the deal they wanted, and they made it happen when it was the earliest it could be feasible because of the cap. But originally my thoughts were, I didn't like the deal at first because I thought getting Jared Verse and multiple number ones, I thought that was fair value for a player the caliber of Myles Garrett. But it just sounds like the Cleveland Browns are absolutely sky high on Jared Verse and his potential as he continues to develop as a pass rusher in this league. He's already one of the 10, 15 best, depending on who you talk to and what their rankings are in terms of pass rushers. Like, he's shown great talent the first couple of years. If he can continue to put it together, especially here in Cleveland, then the Browns can feasibly say they've won the trade. Obviously, you're trading one of the greatest pass rushers of all time, the two-time reigning defensive player of the year. Theoretically, you're not going to win it early and immediate, but in the long term, if Jared Verse is a Cleveland Brown for 8 to 10 years, goes to multiple Pro Bowls, makes a couple All-Pro teams, racks up some sacks, and helps the Browns win as they continue to rebuild, then it's going to look like a good trade.
What was your thought on the compensation for this? Because I feel like they did try to get the rule passed to where you'd be able to trade more than 3 first round picks, and they ultimately withdrew that proposal. They end up getting 3 draft picks, a first, a second, and a third, which could turn into another first, but I don't see the Rams trading Myles Garrett into the AFC North, in the next few years. What was your thought on the compensation? Because I feel like with a player like Myles and his caliber, it's hard to put an actual number on what should be deserved. So when you break it down with those 3 picks and Jared Verse, who, if teams were to try to trade for him, would maybe yield 2 firsts, a first and a second. So what are your thoughts about the compensation for this?
So, like, the early indications and the early messages I got when there was a lot of rumors were a Ricky Williams-esque package, which made me think we were going to get multiple ones, maybe multiple twos, multiple threes. Getting a 1, a 2, and a 3, like I had said, I really wasn't happy with it at the time. But when you say like Jared Verse is worth a first and a second, a first and a third, then you're looking at 2 1s and 2 2s and 2 3s, hypothetically. So, in hindsight, I think, and we'll see obviously once Jared Verse hits the field, how he looks in Mike Rutenberg's defense. In hindsight, it might be worth it what we gave up. But the original thought was like, we didn't get enough. I thought we should get 2 1s and maybe a Jared Verse. But to get a 1, a 2, and a 3 to where you have multiple picks in those rounds in the 27, 28, and 29 drafts, that's good draft flexibility, good draft capital. So Andrew Berry did well in that. And then obviously, like, Jared Verse was the thing that hung this whole deal up. The deal obviously had been in talks for quite some time since the draft. So it makes you think like the Browns and the Rams had some kind of framework of a deal where it was just strictly picks. But obviously Jared Verse was a player they coveted, and it was the right move for the Browns to ultimately make.
So let me ask this in terms of winning the trade, because that's what everybody's going to be concerned with over the next couple of years. I would imagine the only way that the Rams win this trade is if they win the Super Bowl while Myles Garrett is there. But for Cleveland to quote unquote win the trade, maybe using this first round pick to get their quarterback that they've been desperately searching for, how does Cleveland win this trade?
They win this trade on two things. If Jared Verse comes and continues to develop as a pass rusher, and he turns into a consistent top 10 pass rusher in the National Football League for the next 5 to 7 years, and that the Browns ultimately walk away with a franchise quarterback in 2027. Unless, of course, Shador Sanders wins the starting job and has a successful second year and shows the Browns that he is the guy going forward. But it looks like on paper, the Browns have set themselves up to have draft flexibility to go out and draft a franchise quarterback. Will they ultimately get that guy in the 2027 draft? That's to be determined. And obviously, you got to see how the 2026 season sets itself out. But if Verse turns into what we think he can be, what he's shown the first couple years in Los Angeles, and the Browns ultimately get a franchise quarterback, that'll really kickstart the rebuild going into 2027 and beyond.
So does this change the outlook of this season?
Lost Andy here or Anthony here for a second. See if we can get him back. We have lost Anthony, I think, for the moment, guys. So just sit tight with me for a minute. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you want to drop any comments or questions in the chat, we'll be happy to answer them as well. So Jokey. Oh, shit. He just said his power flickered, so we'll get him back here. So just sit tight, everybody. Alex is here and he's enjoying it. Thank you, Alex. Oh man, this is good. This is good content right here. This is what we live for. We will hide Anthony for the moment, so it'll just be me for now. He asked pretty much, and I'm sure he'll come back and ask me again, does this change the outlook? It really doesn't for me. And I know people will probably think I'm being negative when I'm just being real. I did not think the Browns were going to be that great this year. I know some people are calling for 10 wins. And my explanation, and I'll talk about it throughout the summer when we do, and Anthony's back. But for me, like my outlook on the Browns right now is there's just a lot of new pieces offensively, obviously a new coaching regime coming in. I don't see like the Browns being that good this year. I mean, there's questions in the defensive secondary in terms of their depth. You're looking at 5 new offensive line starters, new rookie skill position players, the uncertainty at the quarterback position, which I think is the biggest thing. Like, I just don't see it being a good season. And I think the Myles Garrett trade kind of changed the outlook because I think you could have convinced me they could win 8 to 10 games with a great defense with a lot of the pieces that are back on defense. But yeah, my outlook definitely changed with the Myles trade. I'd probably put him at 6 wins max. I don't know how you feel about that, Anthony.
Hey, hold on, I'm trying to get my damn camera back here. I'm not sure what's going on, why it's not connecting. This would happen in the time that we finally get to record after so long. It's not even
Right.
recognizing that I have a camera here at the moment, so I don't know.
Could you try unplugging it and plugging it back in? That
Well,
never
I know,
fails.
I know. I got to figure out which cord goes to it because I have so many damn cords sitting over here. Um, I don't want to like unplug my microphone or anything. Um, but let's see here.
Oh, and by the way, our Facebook video got removed for a copyright reason. I was probably thinking it's probably one of the photos, but we're
Oh,
off to a great start.
maybe. I think this is the camera. No, that's not it.
9 wins only because of the strength of schedule, but it could also go the other way as well. I like Jeff. If one of these quarterbacks comes out and looks good, and Munkin's offense, and like Judkins comes back from the injury looking good, the receivers make an immediate impact, I'll be on this podcast saying I was wrong. But yeah, like I don't see it. I could be totally off though. Someone sent a tech over to Anthony's
Yeah,
a
I'm
pretty
gonna need it. I'm pretty good at it. That's the problem. It's like if I'm having trouble, it's a really bad thing.
Mother Nature said you guys aren't recording tonight or don't go on live. So
Um,
well, Anthony, while you're working on it, like how do you feel the Browns 2026 outlook changed with the Myles trade? Because you
I
can talk through this right now.
I could talk. Like for me, I don't think it really changed a whole lot. I feel like that they were kind of in a holding pattern to see what happened. With this season anyway, and trying to figure out the quarterback situation. So, whether it's going to be Shador, whether it's going to be Deshaun, I, I really don't think much really has changed. The defense was still going to be good to great. I still think that that's a possibility with Jared Verse. Miles is a hell of a player, but we've seen what Verse has been able to do. But I really don't think a whole lot changed because you're still trying to answer the quarterback question.
Without a doubt. And that was actually going to be our next topic point as Anthony continues to try to fix the camera.
Hold on,
Is the
I'm
quarterback?
going to refresh here and try to come
Oh,
back in.
okay, no problem. I can bounce you out, and then I can ramble for a few minutes. But we were going to talk about the. Oh, you're back.
There we go.
You're back, Jokey. But we were going to talk about the quarterback position. Obviously, the ongoing competition. It seemed like a lot of people just automatically assumed that Deshaun was going to be the starter, and he still very may well be. But Todd Monken did kind of pivot from what his stance was all spring to where he was going to want to name a starter at the end of minicamp. And at that week of minicamp, last week, he was like, I'm not ready. I think we have two good quarterbacks, which we've heard that quote before, and it pretty much means there's no quarterback on this roster. But my thing of it is Deshaun, I think, has had the edge because he's obviously been a veteran in the league. He's been in numerous offenses. I think he probably understood the terminology of Todd Monken's offense a little better. So I think in the quarterback room, I think he's had that edge. But then once they've gotten out on the field with OTAs and in minicamp, I think the gap has closed somewhat. I think Shador obviously has given the coaching staff a reason to not name the starter because I think if he had struggled on the field, I think Deshaun probably would have been named the starter last week and we would have gone into training camp with Deshaun as the starting quarterback of the Browns. But I think they're going to let the summer break play out, let these guys come back. And probably that first week, maybe they stretch it out to a first preseason game. But I do think they're going to give us a little bit more time to see how these guys come back, to see how they've prepared, and then to see how they look once the pads get put on.
Yeah, I think that you want to have it figured out before they have that joint practice with the Bills because you do treat that as, a pseudo preseason game nowadays. And, it kind of gives you a good test of, what your team's going to look like this season. So I would think that, training camp, that first preseason game at the latest. But I would fully expect them to go into that week with Buffalo, having a named starting quarterback. So that way you can see how they perform against another defense.
Do you honestly have a preference on who the starter is? Because I know A lot of people don't like Deshaun Watson. I would say the majority of Browns fans don't like Deshaun. The majority of the Browns fans want to see Shador and what he looks like in this offense. But I've kind of come to the conclusion, like, at this point, I don't care because as much as I like Shador, I don't think the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns going forward is on this roster. Um, I could be wrong. I like Shador. I hope he pans out. But I just pick the best guy at this point. I mean, and then just see how it goes. Because if it doesn't go well, we have 2 first-round picks next year. We may take a quarterback in the supplemental draft coming up, which I think we could spend a whole nother episode on. But I just think the quarterback for the future isn't currently on this roster, and I want to know your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so my preference is that Shador starts and you try to figure it out and see if he can piece it together. What my preference though is a lot different than what I think should happen, or will happen. I think that they're going to go with Deshaun, and if he struggles in those first few weeks, um, you can go to Shador. If they were to go the other way around, I think it would be more of a disaster because if Shador struggles, then you put Deshaun out there and he struggles. It would be very hard to go back to Shador at that point. So I would prefer Shador to start for the season and just name him the starting quarterback. And any sort of ups and downs, you're going to roll with him. If that is not the case, you know, should try Deshaun first and then go to Shador if he ultimately just can't piece anything together.
Yes, Alex, I said draft. That, like I said, that's a whole nother episode we'll touch on because obviously the news that broke last night and the connection with the Cleveland Browns, like it's something we can't avoid as Browns fans to not talk about. But yes, there is a draft coming in a month. It's the supplemental draft, which we haven't had in a while. I'm actually glad you brought up the whole starting with Deshaun and going to Shador. I think it's easier to do that because if you go to Shador and he struggles, like you can't justify putting Deshaun out there at that point. I feel like you can in terms of trying to salvage the season and salvaging jobs, perhaps, because I don't think Monken's safe by any means. I think he could be a one and done just based on his age and obviously everything that goes in with that. But it's easier to go from the veteran, and if he struggles the first couple games, and then you go to the young guy to try to spark it, than going the other way around.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with what we've seen from our football team over the last handful of seasons, is that you could probably expect Dylan Gabriel or Taylor Green to start a game at some point this year. It's unfortunate that's how it's been, but you could expect one of those guys if Gabriel's still on his team come regular season. I think that they would probably keep Taylor over him, but I would fully expect one of them to start at least one game this year.
Speaking of Dylan Gabriel, did you see his IG story here in the last couple of days?
The one where he put up a picture of Baker because he's number 6 now.
Yes,
I did see that. Yes,
and I thought it was a fake, and then I went and looked, and it was the real thing, and I'm like, I'm beginning to grow on Dylan Gabriel. Like I know, like it's never gonna work with him, but I mean, at least the kid, like, he doesn't just stand there and take it. Like he claps back when it's necessary, and obviously he's got some confidence in himself. Like, could he be Baker Mayfield somewhere? Yeah. I mean, that's still to be determined, but I think it's funny he's kind of trolling Browns fans with like a picture of Baker in a 6 jersey because he's not wearing number 6.
Yeah, if anything, I think his total ceiling is Colt McCoy, who was a backup quarterback for so long, at that size. And, he does seem like a very smart football player and makes good decisions. I just don't think that, he has everything that a starting franchise quarterback could have. I think he has some serviceable tools, but I just don't expect him to, be that type of guy anywhere.
Jeff, that's to be determined. Obviously, we got to see how the supplemental draft goes and whether the Browns are reportedly interested in him or not. Like, they're.
Do you just want to talk about it because I feel like
we might as well. I mean, we're kind of beating around the bush, but we might as well just bring it up. Like,
because you know, Lord knows the power may strike me again, and when who knows when we can record another time. So we might as well just get through it and talk about this.
Right. So obviously the elephant in the room is Brendan Sorsby, the former Texas Tech quarterback now, because he has parted ways with the uh, university. He's applying to enter for the NFL supplemental draft because he obviously, like, the whole situation with him with the gambling, which I wanted to bring up because I've read things on it, but I don't fully know like the total details of it. I think it's something like 9,000 bets he placed, including some on his own team between Indiana and Cincinnati. Like, obviously there's severe ramifications with him when discussing him, but obviously there's been a lot of buzz with him. Field Yates mentioned the Browns as one of a few teams that could put in a bid for him if he does get approval into the supplemental draft. But Anthony, I don't know how much you've followed this story, but obviously, how do you feel about Brendan Sorsby? And despite everything that he's done, would you be cool with the Cleveland Browns putting a bid on him in the supplemental draft?
So I'll be the first to be honest here. I probably have maybe watched one of his football games in college. You know, I've seen a lot of things that people have said about his game and the different things that he can and cannot do. Um, the gambling part of it, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. We see all what happened here with Emmanuel Clase, in town, and you know, I don't know if the NFL will go to that extreme, but probably because it wasn't on NFL games. But a guy that bets on his own team, I don't want that. And um, look, you have no idea what punishment the NFL is going to hand down here, because they can hand down something, and and if it's for like a season, that already takes out a year of development, and you're right back in the same position you are next off season. Um, if he is able to come back from suspension at that point, look, I understand that there's probably a very and a betting analogy, I guess, is kind of funny here. Like, there is a high risk, high reward with this quarterback, and I personally would not touch it. Um, but we'll see what we heard what Todd Monken said about him over the last handful of days, which was very interesting as well. He's kind of leaving it up to Andrew and the front office, but um, I personally would not deal with this.
Yeah, it was funny because Monken, he talked about that the day the Myles Garrett trade happened, and he was like, went scorched earth on Brendan Sorsby and was pretty much like, we don't need that. I like the quarterbacks we have in the room. Andrew Berry gave his usual answer. They'll do their research on guys, and everybody deserves a second chance, which he's not wrong. And it's going to be interesting to see who thinks Brendan Sorsby deserves a second chance and how he'll make the most of it. But just to share with people who don't know the details, I went to his Wikipedia page just because there is sourced things about the gambling scandal. Sorsby checked in for rehab on a sports gambling addiction back in April. In May, the NCAA ruled him ineligible. Sorsby was denied his request for reinstatement. Then in May, he admitted to placing over $90,000 in bets over 4 years on his own team 40 times and using family and friends' gambling accounts to evade detection. Like, he wagered on Indiana football when he was there. I saw reports that he wagered on Cincinnati football, and I could be off on that, but I swore I saw reports that said he did that. But these are obviously severe ramifications with him. Like, you placed 40 bets on your own team during your collegiate career, and like, how upfront was he with Texas Tech? Like, there's a lot of questions left to be answered with Brendan Sorsby. And I know his pro day is going to be on July 10th. The supplemental draft, I think, is like July 22nd, which is right around the time training camp opens up. So this is a big risk for the Browns. It's a big risk for any NFL team when you're dealing with a guy that's obviously have a severe gambling addiction to do what he did and admitting to it. I mean, he admitted to it and he went into rehab and he spent a month plus there. So I think he's trying to fix his situation because obviously he ruined his college eligibility. And like you said, he's probably going to get suspended by the NFL, which I've talked to people who said like the league's not going to suspend him. The league suspended Terrell Pryor because he decided to bolt from Ohio State and enter the supplemental draft. They suspended him and they suspended Jim Tressel. So the NFL will do what they got to do. And obviously, if there's enough backlash by any team who decides to draft him, like the NFL is going to come down probably on him. And it wouldn't shock me if he suspended the entire 2026 season.
Yeah, we obviously had a first-hand account of what happened with Josh Gordon when he was here as well. So it's going to be very curious to see what the NFL does with his situation because the bets didn't occur in the NFL. I'm intrigued by what kind of punishment they do put down. If anything, they need to make a statement on it with any sort of suspension because you don't want this to be a future thing that continuously happens. The NCAA and all these leagues need to figure something out as well. It's just a mess over there at Texas Tech. That joke of a roundtable that they had trying to defend him was very funny to watch. Being on the outside and not a Texas Tech fan by any means, but seeing the hoops that those guys were willing to jump through for this kid, it was just laughable. So I would prefer not to have him anywhere near our football team, but we've said that about quite a handful of players while Andrew Berry has been here, and it's gone the other way. So who knows what happens?
So because we're talking about Brendan Sorsby, who is a potential draft prospect, Anthony, I had to bring our draft guru in just to talk for a few minutes on Brendan Sorsby and the talent that he has. It's our guy at the CLE Sports Guy on Twitter. He is our tribal chief, Alex Hale. Alex,
please
say his name and he appears.
please do not bring any injuries to this podcast based off what is going on in Cleveland.
Yikes.
Yeah, no, we're not going to talk about that right now. So Sorsby, before all this, you guys, I wish people could see our group chat and how I'm already like, in December, I'm like, oh, next year's class, this guy, and this guy. But Sorsby, I've been saying even to you guys, like, this is a late first, like back in December, like keep an eye out. And even when he went back, I'm like, what is he doing? Like, this makes no plausible sense because he's a first round guy. He could have been the number one pick. Like, I will stand on that. If there's no gambling stuff, there's a good chance just by the athleticism that he has, that's better than Mendoza and a better arm than Mendoza. Not as accurate as Mendoza or as polished, but there's a good chance that the Raiders go the route of Sorsby number one and Mendoza goes number two. Now, I think that's probably 1% chance. I think it was Mendoza all the way, but like perfect world, Mendoza goes one, Sorsby two. That's a reality that we'll never see, but it was possible. Watching him over the last couple years, and you got to give Cincinnati credit. Cincinnati had a really solid receiving corps for him, considering everything. You had multiple guys get drafted this year. Yes, they were lay-around guys, but for a school like Cincinnati, that's a good receiving corps to have. You have two guys that went pro. The thing with Sorsby that I really like is the arm talent. The arm talent is very real, electric. He needs polish on the accuracy, and everyone keeps saying Baker Mayfield. It's Baker Mayfield, but more mobile. Guys, I can't unsee it. It is Baker Mayfield, but more mobile.
And he looks like him slightly.
Yeah, and he has that moxie and confidence that you want in your quarterback. And you saw him get better and better throughout the year. And I'm not going to listen to some of the takes by national media guys saying 10 out of 10 GMs would have taken him over Arch last year. You're lying to yourself.
I saw that on 92.3 this morning.
That's insane. Now, would 10 out of 10 GMs, maybe not the Raiders, go Mendoza over Sorsby? Yes.
Yeah.
Preliminary. You guys knew this going into the draft. Sorsby was QB3. Right now, and I've locked it in at number 1, Dante Moore is number 1, QB1 on the board. Arch Manning is number 2, and it was Sorsby at 3. And that was tier 1. Everyone else below that's tier 2. Sand was, I think, at the time 4, Sellers 5. It's going to change. We're going to do a whole video on it coming pretty soon. I loved Sorsby's tape. I really did. And I agree with you, Jokey. The gambling thing concerns me. Yes, you can go to rehab. That's great. Congratulations. You can still relapse. And my question is, what is the best environment for Brendan Sorsby? Is that Cleveland? And I say no. And here's why. Now, I did see Jared Muller's conspiracy theory. That's the only scenario where this works. That there is a trade for Shedeur ready if you take Sorsby. You cannot have both. Because he's going to be consistently fighting. And if he slips behind Shedeur, he's going to get depressed. He's going to fall back into his ways. And he's going to run himself out of the league. I do not like this fit at all. I am terrified of the idea of him going to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of that thought. Because Aaron Rodgers is the perfect, sit down, listen to what I have to say. None of this BS. You are my successor. Now, I'd feel bad for Drew Aller, but still. That's
and Will Howard.
And let's go trade for Will Howard.
My brother is not in here telling us to trade for Will Howard. I'm disappointed in him.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you who I think is going to go for him. Philly. It makes so much sense. And I am willing to go as far as saying Philly will give up the first. Philly would be willing to do it. And we had talked about during our draft show, I put nothing past Howie Roseman. And Howie Roseman's going to put him in a beautiful scenario where it's like, look, you're going to be suspended. And I was listening to McShay's show earlier, and I forgot who he had on, one of the NFL analysts. But he was talking about the big thing with Sorsby is he's not part of the Players Association. That's a big deal. There is absolutely zero precedent right now with the Players Association and with not being a part of it and coming up with a deal for suspension. So we don't know how long this suspension is going to be. It's a risk anyways. So if you're Philly, if you get word, and that's why they're trying to rush this whole process before the supplemental draft.
Yeah.
If you're telling me it's a 4-game suspension, if I'm Philly, 4-game suspension, well, Hurts was going to start the first 4 games anyways. He can still be in the building because it's going to be treated like a drug policy violation. So he can still be, in the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not giving up the first for him? Because if Jalen Hurts sucks, who cares? He's going to be my quarterback by end of year, and I'm going to look like a genius. And I get to cut Hurts free, and I got my guy. That's the perfect scenario for him, is a Philly or a Pittsburgh where he's in a positive situation for him to develop. Cleveland, I do not think offers that, not because they cannot develop quarterbacks, but because there are too many cooks in the kitchen. They like Taylor Green.
Your mic cut
Sorry.
out for a second.
No, you're good.
No. Shedeur is liked enough, And Watson, as much as I hate to say, is doing well enough.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going?
Shador would have to go. And if they draft Brendan Sorsby, like it's been floated around, there has to be something set up to move Shador.
Yeah. So, and I think they like Taylor Green a lot more than they lead on. Like, I think they have packages for him in the red zone. But besides the point, Brendan Sorsby, if you were to ask me right now, Alex, what are you willing to do if you're the Browns? Y'all are going to kill me. I'm willing to give up the second for him only because of this. If the rumors are true that Pittsburgh's looking, yes, I'm willing to hedge against the fact that I do not want to see him in those colors. I am terrified of the idea. I'd rather have this kid ruin his career here than go to Pittsburgh and be their franchise quarterback. I hate to be that guy. Like, sometimes as a GM, you're playing chess, not checkers. And if it means you're ruining players' lives, and I know that sounds really harsh, but that's what being a GM is.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to put the second round on it and cut off Shador and say, Deshaun, you're starting. Talon for 4 weeks, you're backup. I know that sucks, but guess what? We're going to suck anyways. So if it doesn't work out, guess what? We're getting a quarterback next year.
Yep.
Can I throw two teams at you that would have quarterback questions in here that I think that would be really good fits?
And I have a team as well.
My two are the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks.
Love Detroit. If Ben Johnson was still there, I would say I'd give up a first. I would just say yes, please. Seattle, I think Darnold's going to be the guy for 3-4 more years. It's not the right fit.
And my team, he's staying in Texas, the Dallas Cowboys.
I thought about that one too. Jerry is crazy enough to do it. I think that is the worst place for him to go.
He's crazy to give up a first too.
I have another team too, the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love's been hurt, I think, almost every year.
LaFleur will get everything out of him.
Yes.
If he doesn't listen to LaFleur, then he's screwed. The other thing with Texas is Texas doesn't allow sports gambling in their state. Now, granted, you can find ways around it.
Yeah.
You can do offshore. I know that.
But there's no evidence he was doing anything in Texas. He just got there.
I'm just saying, if he wanted to relapse, again, another factor I would say is go to a state where you can't.
Yeah, you can get around it.
There is a way around it. I'm just saying, make it harder.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Alex, that's what we just wanted you to come in and.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude.
No, you're good.
You're fine.
We were planning on doing a whole separate episode on this, but obviously we couldn't hide from it. So it was we might as well just discuss it. And we were thankful we were able to.
You won't be able to hide from him in a month when he's wearing the brown and orange.
So he's going to wear he wore number 2 at Cincinnati. Uh-oh.
Tim Couch.
Who's wearing
Shador's number?
Who's wearing number 2 right now? Maybe he'll bully Gabriel for 6.
Look, man, I need Gabriel to just go to Atlanta already. Penix hasn't been cleared yet. Penix hasn't been cleared.
Stefanski talked today. He goes, "We're not giving out starting jobs in June," and I'm like,
"He's coming for Dylan."
Penix is hurt, and Tua's Tua. Give me the all lefty room in Atlanta.
I need it.
We need it.
Ken Stabler will be honored.
All right, Alex. Thanks for hopping in with us, brother. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Take care, Alex.
All right. So we talked quarterback. We talked Brendan Sorsby. Anthony, there's something going on in the Browns secondary that I don't think has gotten discussed enough. Grant Delpit and Denzel Ward did not participate in OTAs. They didn't participate in minicamp. They were there, but they didn't participate. Grant Delpit's coming up on the final year of his deal. Denzel's got 2 years left and has stated his case. He wants to stay in Cleveland because I know there was some scuttlebutt after the Myles trade if he would be next. And I still think it's possible at the trade deadline, but could they be holding in? And I think it's not as far fetched as people could say it is or isn't, but Delpit, I can for sure seeing him holding in, waiting for a new deal, obviously because he's on the last one. But I could see Denzel being like, I want to stay here, but my contract's almost up. Let's just make this for the rest of the career, like add a couple years on. Like, do you think holding in is a legitimate option for those two? And do you think both should be extended as Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, it's funny. When the power went out, I lost my whole sheet that had notes on it on my computer. I was so mad because I had stuff down about, hey Jake, good to hear from you. Another one of the boys. But yeah, this Delpit's in the last year of his deal, right? And then Ward has 2 years remaining, but no more guaranteed money.
Yeah, which I'm going to pull up corner and safety numbers just to theoretically talk what the extension would look like for each one of them.
Yeah, I would be totally fine with both. I think Denzel, a lot of teams will probably come knocking at the door around the trade deadline. If the Browns are out of it, then they'll kick the tires and see what they could get him for. If you do an extension, it'd probably make that very hard at that point. But look, they reset or have reset their defense over the last couple of seasons, and you have a lot of rookies on defense, so you could afford to pay some of the veteran players and keep them around. You still have probably 2 more years before you have to pay Jared Verse because he has 3 years left on his deal, including the 5th-year option, which they'll definitely pick up. I could see after next offseason them being that extension, but that number won't kick in for 3 years at that point. You have Mason Graham another 4 years. You have Schlesinger for 3 years. So I would totally be fine with it. You have Watson probably coming off the books after this season. You're going to have a quarterback on a rookie deal, whether that's Shador or somebody that they draft next offseason. So you have quite a bit to play around with here. So I would be totally fine with it. Keep one of your veteran players. It seems like that they were willing to keep around JOK, but unfortunately, he had his injury. I think that's something that you could do with Delpit, and he is definitely a versatile player and can do a lot of different things on this defense. So totally fine with extending him. Denzel, I would extend him and maybe guarantee money for this year and next year, but really nothing after that. We do know what his injury history is like with all of the concussions and that kind of stuff. So I would be open to adding another year or 2 onto his deal and giving him some guaranteed money over the next couple of seasons. But beyond that, I really wouldn't, go too crazy with it.
Yeah, let me pull up the corner numbers real quick. I got to make it a little bigger. But like Trent McDuffie just reset the market here in the offseason, getting a new deal with the Rams. Sauce Gardner obviously got his new deal when he got traded to the Colts. Stingley, like those guys are relatively younger. Denzel's 29. You look at a familiar number like Jalen Ramsey. I think this was before he got traded to Pittsburgh. Got 24.1 million a year. He's 32. Denzel's making 20.1 million. Marlon Humphrey's making 19.5. Denzel's still playing at a top 10 level. So I would have no problem if they bumped it up to 22, 23 million a year. Maybe make it a 3-year deal. I think that would be a fair number, I think, for both sides, obviously, because a lot of the cap is going to reset here in the next couple of years because we have a lot of rookie contracts. The Watson contract comes off the books. The dead money will be off the books. Obviously, this is something that, and I know Jack Duffins probably wrote about it, but it's a good idea. I think like a 3-year, $70 million extension for Ward where you guarantee a bunch of it, I think is fair. And then let's look at safeties real quick. I know
in terms of safeties, Rodney Hickman's a free agent after this season as well.
Yeah, and he just signed his tender. He'll be back. Delpit's on the last year of a 3-year, $36 million extension. Obviously, he's about middle of the pack. We saw Derwin James get extended a couple weeks ago at 25.2 million a year. Um, he's not Delpit's not wanting that. I just wonder, like, where's he wanting to get to? Is he wanting to get into Jesse Bates range, 16 million a year? Javon Holland, who's around 15 million. Him and Cam Bynum, Delpit's 28. So those are familiar numbers. I think you probably look at guaranteed money too. Obviously, Bynum got 32 million in guaranteed money. Holland 30.3. Who was the other? Jesse Bates got 36 million guaranteed. So I don't know, like a 3-year deal, maybe 50 million, and you guarantee him around 35 million a year. Maybe just like the first 2 years, make it guaranteed. I feel like that would be fair. Line it up to where it overlaps with it ends when Emmanuel McNeil Warren's contract would be due. I feel like that would be good. It's something what's Duffin always called it, like, I forget what the term was that he always used.
I would do it because you would probably want to try to extend McNeil Warren, after his third year. So giving Delpit, a 3-year deal, including this year, with 2 more years, I think would be a good starting point.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting to keep this defense together as long as possible, you get Ward and Delpit on 2 to 3 year extensions, and then when it's time to pay, Verse, Swessinger, potentially McNeil Warren, Mason Graham, like those contracts will be off the books. Those guys might end up retiring as Cleveland Browns, or they just move on. Like Denzel's probably going to be a Brown for life, I would assume. Delpit might want to leave at some point, but I would try to get them both locked up on extensions just because it makes sense right now. You're trying to keep some of that defense together. Obviously, Myles is gone, but try to keep the core group of the defense together at least for the next couple years.
Yeah, and we'll be curious to see what Mike Rutenberg has planned for, Grant Delpit and the versatility that he does bring. So, there's a handful of guys, like Delpit, like McNeil Warren, like Hickman, that are versatile and the different things that they can do. So I'm very excited to see what those plans bring for the future of these guys.
No doubt. What was the last topic we were gonna? Was it the rookie receivers?
Well, I had 2 more. I had the rookie receivers, and I guess Isaiah Bond in there as well. And I thought that we should also say something about Joel Bitonio.
Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot about Joel. But let's talk about the receivers because obviously they stood out big time during the spring practices and mini camp and everything. And I'm glad you threw in Isaiah Bond because he's obviously going to be a key part of this offense. But Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, who did sign last week, which completed the draft class, so we don't have to worry about any guys missing training camp, which they shouldn't with how the rookie scale contracts are constructed. But all those two, Denzel Bond, they really stood out during spring ball, especially Concepcion and Boston. Once they got into the facility, started getting acclimated with the offense. That's one of the bright spots, I think, going into 2026 for the Cleveland Browns is we have legitimate talent at the wide receiver position. You throw in Jerry Jeudy, you throw in Harold Fannin, who's going to be year 2 at the tight end position, who missed almost of the spring. They didn't really say why, but he didn't really practice. Obviously, he can't hold out for a new deal because he's only in year 2 of his rookie contract. But the amount of talent at the Browns skill positions has to make Browns fans feel pretty good. Regardless of the quarterback situation, like the Browns have legit skill talent now. And I think that's one of the things I'm looking forward to heading into this season.
Yeah, the wide receiver room over the last handful of seasons, outside of the year that Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco, went crazy, the wide receiver room for as long as I can remember has really been a question mark, whether you want to go back to the Corey Coleman days or you want to go back to the Brian Robisky, Mohamed Massaquoi days. Like, there's been some pretty dark times in that receiver room. And, it's nice to see some of these young guys with talent. Can one of these guys be a number 1 receiver? I think that it seems to be in recent NFL history that guys in the later first, second round, even third round, like you can find a guy that can be that. Um, I have loved what I have seen from Denzel Boston so far. Um, Concepcion's going to, change the return game, I think, as well. Bond in his second year, not dealing with, all the distractions he had last year. Jerry Judy kind of pushing these guys and really having to push because he's fighting for his spot, possibly after this season too. So, there's some competition brewing in that room. And I just absolutely love to see that. And, I think that Boston could definitely be a number one type guy, but I think the wild card here is Bond and his home run hitting ability. Um, we've seen some of the throws that have been made, and it's going to look a lot different in games when Shador, Watson are facing pressure, in their faces, and you're it's going to be a little more difficult at that point. But I feel that a guy like Bond really has the opportunity here to make some noise and allow these other guys to get open.
Yeah, I mean the way that these guys can stretch the field and the way they can create space to get open, like Concepcion and Bond, like you talk about guys that can be electric, like those two can be two of the most electric receivers in the league if they live up to the hype and to the talent that they have. Denzel Boston, I think, is he's looked amazing. Like this guy, am I far-fetched to say he could be Josh Gordon like in terms of his talent because of his size, because of his vertical threat down the field? Like I don't think it's far-fetched to go that far to say that he has that ability to be Josh Gordon like. Like obviously Josh Gordon was out of this world during the 2013 season, but I think Boston possesses everything you want in a big receiver. And I think I'm looking forward to him the most. I did place a wager on him to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, which are pretty high odds right now. If anybody wants to go make a small wager on that, I feel like that might be worth the risk.
It's funny that we're talking about wagers right after we talked about Sorsby, but
it's the world we live in now. But yeah,
Yep.
I just really like this wide receiver room. It's going to be tough cuts. I mean, you look at it like Judy, Concepcion, Boston, and Bond, I think are locks. Cedric Tillman has shown it, but he can't stay healthy. Tylan Wallace, I think, can be a special teams threat, and he showed that in Baltimore with Monken. Malachi Corley showed flashes last year. Jamari Thrash has worked with the quarterbacks in the offseason. Gage Larvidan, we know there was a lot of hype with him last year in training camp, and Luke Floria. Like, I think we're going to be disappointed when roster cut downs come because there might be a surprise one. And it cracks me up because they're like, who's the most likely Brown to get cut with talent? And it's Cedric Tillman. And it's like, it's a good thing we're in that spot now because Cedric Tillman, and I've liked what I've been able to see from him when he's been out on the field, but he can't stay healthy. But when we're at that point where that's like the most surprising roster cut coming potentially, according to some of the national media, like it shows that the wide receiver room really is heading in the right direction.
I think that if Denzel Boston and Concepcion can really, solidify their places here, it could really open up the door for Judy to return to what he's really good at and being in that slot role and utilizing him in so many different ways. If they're able to do that with him, it's going to open up so much more. And I would love to see that be the case. And, in the passing game too, you have Harold Fannin, who had the great year last year. You have Dylan Sampson as well. So, there's a lot of different targets for the quarterbacks. But the key thing is obviously the quarterbacks on how they perform and the offensive line that they've rebuilt over this offseason too. And I think the offensive line is probably going to determine a lot of this, and then the quarterbacks after that for sure.
For sure. And I think it was Daniel Ofusi was in a Twitter space during the offseason, and he talked about when the Browns traded for Judy, the plan was for him to be the third receiver in this offense, but behind Cooper and Njoku, and that was coming off I think, the 2023 season. So obviously, Amari Cooper had his great year with Flacco. Njoku had his best year with Flacco. So obviously, the hype was there. You had Jerry Jeudy, and then Cooper falls off, gets traded to Buffalo. Njoku never finds that magic again, and obviously he's gone. And then Jerry Jeudy was thrusted into the number one wide receiver role, which I don't think that's him. I think he's a solid number two in this league. And I'm with you. Like, if Boston and Concepcion pan out, I think Jeudy can settle back in to being that second or third option in this offense, maybe even the fourth behind Harold Fannin Jr., and that might be his best strong suit. And he might get another solid payday, whether it's from the Browns or somebody else. But I don't think Jerry Jeudy is a number one wide receiver, but I think he can be a playmaker in this league for sure. And he's shown that here.
Yeah. Oh, that Denver game a couple years ago, that was something special that he had. So, that's what he could bring to the table. And, if he can be the third and fourth guy, I think that only benefits him and benefits this offense even more. And I'm excited to see what Muckin will be able to do to scheme things to get him open.
Without a doubt. Let's wrap up tonight's episode talking about Joel Bitonio. Obviously, he announces his retirement last week. Lifelong Cleveland Brown. There was some rumblings that he might have been coming back, and I was hoping for it. Because offensive line depth is not a bad thing, and B, would have just liked to see him get one more run. But obviously, he said, like, I wanted to play. He goes, my body was just not going to be able to do it, and it's pretty much what happened with Joe Thomas at the end of his career. That torn tricep was like the final blow for Joe, no pun intended. But like, it's when you play so many consecutive snaps and you play through injuries, like at some point your body just taps out and says, I'm done. And it's a shame that some guys' careers have ended that way. But, for Joel, like, obviously he was the bright spot in that 2014 NFL draft class, which will always be remembered for Justin Gilbert and Johnny Manziel. But Joel Bitonio was our second round pick, and he had a great career with the Cleveland Browns, multi-time All-Pro, multi-time Pro Bowler. He'll go in the Ring of Honor here. He should go in Canton one day. I don't know if he will, because it's hard for guards to get into the Hall of Fame, but Joel played at a Hall of Fame level, and it was a shame that only 2 playoff appearances for him, and he didn't even get to enjoy that win in Pittsburgh because he was sick with COVID. And, watching his retirement speech, reading the letter, obviously I got emotional. But he was an awesome player to cover because he always showed up, he always gave it his all, and he was a great Cleveland Brown.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame to, see him go and retire. I definitely think that he didn't want to have that Joe Thomas type injury where, he was on defensive, whether he should come back, whether he should retire. So I think he, took that into consideration because, how tight him and Joe were over the years. And it's something that he's talked about too. If they would have taken him with that Justin Gilbert pick, I don't think anybody would have argued it. And with how his career has panned out, if he would have been a first round pick in that draft, definitely had lived up to it, is what I'm trying to say. So, look, I'm bummed to see him retire, and this offensive line is completely different from what it was last year, and I'm sure that has something to do with it too, and possibly with the outlook of this team. And you have to wonder. He talked about on the Ken Carmer show, because they asked him, did the Myles Garrett trade kind of, solidify this decision? And he said, well, we kind of had decided like 3-4 weeks ago. We were just trying to find a date to, have this press conference, all that kind of stuff. But, after they kind of did that deal, you have to wonder, like, okay, now I'm 100% sure that I don't want to, go through the season with the probability that it's not going to go great. So I would have loved to see him, be out there for a playoff win and making a Super Bowl. But I'm glad that he decided to retire as a Cleveland Brown, not go anywhere else. Like Joe Thomas, it's rare in the NFL for players to spend their whole career with one team. And we've been very lucky to have a couple of those guys in the last handful of years.
Yeah, it's really rare in the sports world anymore because, like, obviously, growing up, we saw guys play for one team for multiple franchises in any sport, and now we've been blessed in Cleveland. We saw Joe Thomas, we saw Joe Batonio, and we're witnessing Jose Ramirez be guys that are going to be one uniform guys. Like, you don't see it very often in sports anymore, and it's usually, and they're good guys that end up being the guys that be in one uniform. And Joe, Joel, and Jose for now, those guys are all one uniform guys. And it's great to see that in a time when the sports world where you don't really get to see it very much anymore.
Well, and even with the turmoil that the Browns have had over the years, to have two guys like Joe Thomas and Joel Batonio, stick with this team through everything that has happened here. You brought up Johnny Manziel, like that was a crazy year. He talked about how he roomed with Johnny and saw things not to do. So, like, there have been some crazy things, over the last 20 years, and for those guys to stick around, it's just a true testament to how much they love the city, how much they love playing here, and just their talent, and being able to withstand everything that has happened.
For sure. It would have been great to see like Alex Mack do that, but obviously he got frustrated with all the turmoil and he bolted as soon as he could. And there was no blaming him at that point, but it was great to see Joe and Joel get to stick around. And Mitchell Schwartz, it would have been great to see him too, because he really started to come into his own and he bolted the same time Alex did. And can't fault either one of them because they both went to solid organizations and finished off their careers playing at a high level. So it was kudos to them. It would have been great to see them beat Browns.
That line that we had with Thomas, Batonio, Mack, was it Greco at right guard, and then Mitchell Schwartz. Like, I don't know if we'll see a offensive line like that again, but that was a great one. And hopefully with what they've been able to do this offseason, we can get back to having something that sort of resembles that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest storylines going into the season is whole new offensive line. How is it going to look and how is it going to shake out? Because obviously they invested a lot into it, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all turns out.
Well, let me ask you this. We saw over the mini camp here, Spencer Fano and DeJuan Jones kind of split time at left tackle. And some of the other changes and split time that they had and trying to figure this thing out. How do you see this offensive line shaking out, as we get towards training camp here?
I think it's going to be Fano, Zion Johnson. The center is going to be fascinating because I do want to see Tevin Jenkins, but Elton Jenkins said he came here to play guard. So I'm going to be watching Parker Brailsford very closely during training camp because it sounds like he was having a promising spring, and I would have no problem if our 5th round rookie is our starting center, if he's getting the job done and Todd Monken and the coaching staff are thinking he's doing great. Would I prefer to see the Jenkins, both Elton at center and Tevin at right guard? I think that would be the best thing to do, but play the 5 best guys. And when you go into camp, don't fiddle with it. Find your best 5, put them out there, let them gel. Like, I don't want to see shifting and them trying to shuffle the deck all throughout training camp, because we've seen how that's gone some seasons where they just could not get any camaraderie and it was just a disaster. So pick your best 5, throw them out there, and let's go.
It does seem like, after the last few years that we actually have some depth on this offensive line, which, for a position group that has suffered quite a handful of injuries over the last few years, it's nice to kind of have that going into the season. And you hope that they all can stay healthy.
Yeah, it's definitely the hope. Obviously, DeJuan's coming off another knee injury. So you hope he can be our swing tackle.
Who looks really lean, by the way.
He looks lean. He looks good. I'm hoping he can stay that and keep that up. They drafted Austin Barber, who looks like he could be another swing tackle for the future if DeJuan doesn't pan out.
You still have Luke Whippler in the center equation with Parker Brailsford, too.
Yeah, like I think those two are going to compete for center if they ultimately go with Elton at right guard. And then you have KT Leveston, who was also doing some time at guard. So they have depth, like you said, and I think that's the best thing for the Browns going into training camp is that they have 9 or 10 guys that can play offensive line, guys that are
Depth and
versatile.
versatility.
Yep, exactly. You took my line there. They got depth and they're versatile. They can kick inside. They can play out. Like Tevin Jenkins can play tackle in a pinch. He's done that before in the past. So you feel good about it on paper, but until you see them on the field, like it's all to be determined at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm definitely excited to see how this offensive line really comes together because that's really going to determine how well, you're able to run the football with, returning Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, protecting these quarterbacks, letting these receivers get open. So I'm very excited to see what this offensive line holds this year.
You and me both.
Not actually holding, but what you get the idea.
Yeah. Oh, I think coaching is really going to nip a lot of that stuff in the butt, and Monken seems like
holding and false starts and delaying games and illegal shifts and illegal formations, all that nonsense.
As much as I like Stefanski, I think Monken's really going to clean a lot of that up in training camp, and he's
and for George Warhop too with the offensive line.
Yeah, because that guy is.
I heard that he made him take a lap the other day, which is kind of funny.
Ain't seen that since the Mangini days, so I definitely like that too.
Nope. All right, man. You want to get out of here?
Yeah. We've gone an hour plus, and
I think we caught up on everything.
Yep.
We battled finding time to schedule this, as well as my power flickering while we've been doing this too. So let's see if I remember how to kind of wrap the show up. Be sure to give Jack a follow over on X at Jack McCurry08. You can see it on the screen there. Give me a follow at Anthony Joki. The Dawgland you can find here on YouTube, which is where you've been watching the show. So be sure to like and subscribe to the video. We would greatly appreciate it. You can find us over on Facebook with the same handle, as well as TikTok. I think that's just everything I needed to say, right?
Yep.
All right. And then, as always, as we get on out of here, as Jack will hit the end button for me, but go Browns.
Go Browns.